We often talk about consistency within a health and fitness journey, whether it's losing weight, whether it's maintaining weight, whether it's building muscle, whether it's bodybuilding, whether it's high performance, elite sports, it doesn't matter. Consistency is king, and we know that. But what does that actually look like from a visual perspective? Well, I wanted to give some examples, and this can be very relevant to a number of different people, particularly some of the examples I just gave, but also just general population. If you're just out there wanting to lose a couple of kilos and you're not sure, everyone talks about this consistency and you're not sure how that looks, this might be the perfect opportunity for you to actually dive a little bit deeper into what you do and make some refinements to suit. So if we look at this first graph here, this spreadsheet, this is basically 365 days a year and what that breaks down to over the course of the year in terms of percentage of being on your consistency and being off your consistency. And your on consistency could resemble a week that's 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. That's up to you in terms of how you define consistency. But when you're on and you are on and your focus is your goal, then this is what that represents. So in this instance, 60% of 365 days is 219 days, okay, which leaves 146 days. So that's what 60% represents. So there's still a fair whack there of days that you're not doing anything or you're inconsistent. In terms of weeks, it's 31 weeks out of the year, and I'll just round up or down on these, and 20.7 or 21 weeks off. So 21 weeks off is a fair chunk of the year, but it is 60%. When we jump up to 70% consistency, you can see here it's 255 days on, it's 109 days, or rounded up to 110 days off, 36 and a half days, 36 and a half weeks off, and only 15 weeks. 36 and a half weeks on and only 15 and a half weeks off. So it is getting less in terms of the weeks off, and that sort of gives you a little bit more perspective there. Then we get to the 80%, and 80% or an 8 out of 10 is still very achievable for most people. So this resembles 292 days on, it resembles 73 days off. So we're now down to double digits in terms of days. And that could be spread over the course. That could be, 1 day a week over the course of all the weeks, plus maybe a couple of extra days here and there. It's, you spread that over the course of 12 months. When we talk about 12 months, that can be spread out quite a bit, and I'll show that in this visual later on. In terms of weeks, that's 42 weeks on and only 10 weeks off. So we're getting down to smaller numbers now. And then when we look at 90%, which again is very achievable for a lot of people, over the course of a year, 328 days or 329 days rounding up on, only 37 days off. That equals 47 weeks on, 47 out of 52, and 5 weeks off. So you can see the difference there, single digits. So when you're at 90%, you can see why consistency plays a massive role in you achieving your goals. Now, I want to break that down into a week scenario. So this is average days that you would say, and let's use training as an example, where you do exercise in some capacity. If you do 4 days a week out of 7 days, that's 57%. Okay? If you do 5 days out of 7 days, that's 71%. If you do 6 days out of 7 days, that's 86%. So you can see that it bumps up. So most people who are fairly serious about their training will aim for 5 days a week. So they're hitting 71%. You spread that over the course of the year, and you're at 70% at the finish line. That's pretty damn good. That's what that represents there. Okay, so it's still a good outcome because only 15 weeks off, only 109 days, which, when we think about it also, we've got to have rest days. Rest days are incredibly important, and rest days need to be consistent as well. So having 110 rest days a year is still really, really good. So you can see what that represents. But then some weeks you might be 4 days on, some weeks you might be 5 days on. So over the course of the year, it might go between 4 and 5, depending on circumstance, your schedule, your job, kids, whatever the case may be. So your average might be 4.5, so you're going to sit somewhere in between there. So you might be at, say, 65%, which is still very good. And it's all relevant and relative to the individual and to what they can give. But when you think of consistency, this is what it looks like from a broader perspective, from a wider lens. Now, in terms of a visual, this is a really good example. So this first example here is a week, right? 1 week, and I know there's only 6 ticks there, but when we look at it from a visual, and this is just, I'm not actually using this as numbers of days or anything like that, it's just a visual. You've got 1 X out of the rest being green ticks, okay? But then when you break that down over a month, there might be 2 X's, and you might have 2 days of inconsistency over the month. And this can apply to diet, this can apply to training, this can apply to your water intake, this can apply to your step count, this can apply to your stress management, your sleep. This is all relevant to all those things. And then when you look at a year, and I know that's not 365 days, but here there's 1x, then there's 2x, then there's 3x, then there's 4x, but the rest are green. The green severely outweighs the red crosses, simply because the green days, you're being more consistent. So that gives you a much broader perspective on what that looks like, okay? So I wanted to give a numerical and a visual perspective on what consistency can actually represent for you and how that looks. So this is the perfect example of if you track your training, if you track your nutrition, if you track your steps, if you track your sleep, if you understand where those things sit and what they represent from a numerical standpoint, quantify them, and therefore you can go, okay, well, I need to improve this here. I need to make some changes here. I need to modify this. I need to change my week. I need to change my month. And all of a sudden, just those subtle improvements can make a big difference. If you improve 1% every single day for the entire year, that's 36.5% you're going to improve over the course of a year. And you go into the next year at a 37, or let's round it up, 37% improvement, and that you've progressed, and whatever that element is that you've actually progressed at, imagine that, 37% better than you were the previous year. I'd take that every day of the week. So you can see how consistency can really pave way. So I want to leave you with that. Anyone that has questions regarding this, please comment, please reach out to me, DM me. This is what consistency truly looks like, and if you can implement a really consistent lifestyle, you're going to go a long way into achieving your results.